So, Frankenstein versus Young Frankenstein, an adaptation analysis. The creation story, big difference there. Mary Shelley only alludes to how the creature is created and imbued with life, and does much to make sure nobody's going to do this again, right? So on page 34 of Mary Shelley's edition, um, he says, I collected bones from charnel houses and disturbed with profane fingers the tremendous secrets of the human frame in a solitary chamber, or rather cell, at the top of the house, and separated from all the other apartments by a gallery and staircase, I kept my workshop of filthy creation. So not in this Gothic castle, as we're led to believe by Mel Brooks's film, if that's our only authority. On page 151, Walton, is on who's traveling with Victor, says in one of his final letters, sometimes I endeavored to gain from Frankenstein the particulars of his creature's formation, but on this point he was impenetrable. He said, are you mad, my friend? Or whither does your senseless curiosity lead you? Would you also create for yourself and the world a demoniacal enemy? Or to what do your questions tend? Peace, peace. Learn my miseries and do not seek to increase your own. So Mel Brooks takes this ambiguity and says, we're going to do lightning. Lightning is going to give the creature life. And the lightning in the beginning of the credits also is very complimentary to what Mary Shelley does in her book, with all the weather of that eternal winter for summer that they were experiencing in real life when she wrote it. And on page 50 is when Victor actually encounters the creature after the death of his brother William. And there's this whole lightning show happening in the text. It says, this noble war in the sky elevated my spirits. I clasped my hands and exclaimed aloud, William, dear angel, this is thy funeral, this is thy dirge. As I said these words, I perceived in the gloom a figure which stole from behind a clump of trees near me. I stood fixed, gazing intently. I could not be mistaken. And discovered its shape plainly to me, its gigantic stature and the deformity of its aspect, more hideous than belongs to humanity, instantly informed me that it was the wretch, the filthy demon to whom I had given life. Dun, dun, dun. So there's this suspected girlfriend that Mel gives us, Frau Blücher, who says she was Victor's girlfriend. And Victor, of course, in the film is Frederick Frankenstein's. How does he say it? He doesn't want to be related to Frankenstein, so he says Frankenstein. That's his grandfather. But the suspected girlfriend is something that is alluded to in Shelley's text on page 108. Victor's father is trying to figure out why Victor's so sad. And he says, nay, you may have met with another whom you may love, and considered yourself as bound in honor to your cousin. The struggle may occasion the poignant misery which you appear to feel. But Victor negates this and says, no, I love her and I want to be married to her. And obviously we know why he's tortured and he doesn't let his father know or anybody. But Elizabeth then has her suspicions too, and she says on page 135, tell me, dearest Victor, answer me, I conjure you, by our mutual happiness, with simple truth, do you love another? Do you not love another? Well, Mel Brooks gives us the fiction that he actually did. the cottage encounter. Mary Shelley develops the creature's narrative with cottage folk who are his protectors. And the father is blind and plays guitar. And there's this whole scene where the creature gets up the courage to go befriend him because, or try to be interviewed by him so that he can be a part of their family, is what he's hoping. And what he's observed of them is such generosity and beauty that he really hopes that this is going to work. So he is staying to this adjoining hovel, but then he approaches the cottage door and he knocks, and the father says, "Oh, it's enter," said De Lacy, "and I will try in what manner I can relieve your wants. But unfortunately, my children are from home, and as I am blind, I am afraid I shall find it difficult to procure food for you." Well, Brooks takes this recipe of the scene and applies it to his film. He spins it to where you're first hearing this music, which is why I put here that the father plays guitar, because that's something that allured the creature and soothed him. And Mel Brooks has Ave Maria playing instrumentally in the background, and the father is a real father, a priest, and he's got his rosary, and he's blind, and he prays for companionship, and in comes the creature. What the creature needed to hear, the relationship that the creature wanted to have with the creator, is something that Mel Brooks spoofs as well. Mary Shelley writes Victor is unable to connect with his creation. He feels completely horrified of it, but has many encounters with a creature who is asking him to be a friend, to be a true father to him, to create him companionship. But Mel Brooks has Friedrich acknowledge the creature as a good boy, and this is just one of my absolute favorite scenes. And then there's like this bit about, in Shelley's version, we get this alternate title, The Modern Prometheus. And Prometheus, as we learned in lecture, brought forth fire in Greek myth, I believe it is. But here in Brooks' adaptation, the monster's afraid of fire. And maybe he is putting a double element on it, because at the end of Shelley's text, the creature says that he is going to create himself a funeral pile and burn to ash. And you can find that on page 161. But also, there are bits throughout. Oh, I can cut this one out. I should clap like. Okay. What could the creature have done when taught? What was the great purpose of this creature? What was the big missed opportunity? Oh, Mary Shelley has Victor just obsessing with this idea on page 33. Well, that motivated him to create the creature was when he says, "When I considered the improvement which every day takes place in science and mechanics, I was encouraged to hope my present attempts would at least lay the foundations of future success. It was with these feelings that I began the creation of a human being. As the minuteness of the parts formed a great hindrance to my speed, I resolved, contrary to my first intention, to make the being of a gigantic Oh, he says, no one can conceive the variety of No one can conceive the variety of feelings which bore me onwards like a hurricane in the first enthusiasm of success. Life and death appeared to me ideal bounds which I should first break through and pour a torrent of light into our dark world. A new species would bless me as its creator and source. Many happy and excellent natures would owe their being to me. But in Mel Brooks's version, he presents an entertainer, a man about town, somebody who can just perform sophisticated tap. And then move this. Oh, I can. Should have done that sooner. The Elizabeth encounter. So Brooks keeps a character of Elizabeth. Now it's important to say that this is a sequel. It's not meant to be the origin story, the first one. It's the second one. Anyway, cut. The Elizabeth encounter. Mary Shelley has the creature coming for Elizabeth on her wedding night. Well, Victor thinks that the creature will kill him, but of course, that wouldn't be enough torment. That would be putting him out of his misery. So instead, the creature endeavors to kill Elizabeth and does. And there's this distinct image at her death. I think Brooks does a really good job of recreating for a moment. Victor says, while I still hung over her in the agony of despair, I happened to look up. The windows of the room had before been darkened, and I felt a kind of panic on seeing the pale yellow light of the moon illuminate the chamber. The shutters had been thrown back, and with a sensation of horror not to be described, I saw at the open window a figure the most hideous and abhorred. A grin was on the face of the monster. He seemed to jeer, as with his fiendish finger he pointed towards the corpse of my wife. And you'll see in the Mel Brooks scene, he's at the window, and you see the moonlight, the pale moonlight, and you see him reach his hand. But he flips the script completely from there. It's just that image that stays intact. So the Bride of Frankenstein, Shelley's creature gave Victor the task of making him a companion, and this is where to which Victor called his sequel, which I think is interesting in talking about Brooks's adaptation, because it really is a sequel. It's a spoof on the original, and it's a parody completely in its second volume here, but it is a sequel. So Brooks' monster takes the namesake Elizabeth and makes her his mate. So in Brooks's film, Friedrich is engaged to an Elizabeth, just like Victor was. But the monster comes and takes her and makes her his bride. And she really digs him. So my final thoughts on Young Frankenstein is that this is just Mel Brooks doing what he does best. He did this with Robin Hood and then Men in Tights. He did this with Spaceballs, like Star Wars. He just knows how to take something classic and just make it hilarious fun. So he holds on to this iconic imagery, and he really milks this music and the lightning and the torrential rain and the gothic atmosphere. And he wants to create this look of this monster being completely ginormous and big forehead and just looks sewn together. But the imagination of this bride, that I believe is a takeoff of the Karloff film. Karloff's the actor. I don't know who the director is.